Hello, 'tis I, Bulldog, here on the Bulldog Experience. Thank you all for coming to this, my show. My cup is indeed full. My bowl is indeed full. And I am full of joy that you've decided to continue to support me on this platform. So, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Build my channel, make it grow, bring more people into this, the Bulldog Experience. I feel that I'm doing a service here. I'm talking to interesting people, wonderful people, people who are unique, that, not often get a voice. And boy, that's wrong. Boy, it's wrong. So, on today's episode of the Bulldog Experience, I have a very good friend of mine, Daniel Levinson, who is Fight Master of FDC and runs Rape Your Wit. So, I guess, without further ado, Daniel, Bulldog, take it away. All right. My next guest is a actor, a Renaissance man, if you will, member of FDC, Fight Master, and owner, operator, and general know-it-all at Rape Your Wit. I'd like to introduce to you all Daniel Levinson. Dan, my friend, it is so good to see you. How are you doing, my friend?
Very well. Very well. Thank you. I got to tell you that it's such a pleasure to be seen. And I haven't actually physically seen you in, well, it's probably 18 months.
Well, no, it was I dropped off that gun plug for you that I welded.
Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. It just, okay, my sense of time has been severely damaged by COVID.
I'm sure that's not just you, my friend. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that's everybody.
I feel very much part of the community of people who have lost their, you know what I say? I feel unmoored, right? You know what I mean? Like a ship. And so, yeah, I know I'm in good time.
That's great. Things will get back to normal soon, I hope. Hopefully the Delta variant won't be too weird or what have you, but thank goodness for the inoculations and getting back at it. I brush him, I really do, but it's a losing battle, So let's just get to the point. What
I'm at your disposal.
What started this? What was the catalyst? What was the moment that you were like, playing with sharp, pointy objects and things that go bang are the things that I want to do for the rest of my life? What was sort of is there one or
Okay, so we have to back up for a second.
Okay.
Because in a very real way, rather than a singular moment, it was a series of developments and discoveries. How about that?
Okay.
As much as I love the hero story, as much as the next person, where born fully formed from Zeus's mind, and you knew exactly what you're going to be. So in university, I, like everyone else in my class, had to take as part of our curriculum stage combat, and I liked it, but I didn't think I was particularly special, particularly if you knew the people who had been in my class. So, for instance, a fellow Fight Master and dear friend of mine, Simon Fawn, was in the class, and he's Fawn, F-O-N, force of nature, we always teased him about, was simply so physically good and brave and brilliant that I was like, oh, I was just one of the guys in the class, like just one of the people.
He still is, really, though. Like,
Oh no, yeah, no. I'm saying, from So
yeah.
what happened, is when I graduated, it was, and this is going to totally age me, and people are like, wow, there was a time at this point. 1991 is when we all got out of school, and it was not a good, like today, it was not a good time to join the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and or there were challenges anyway, and so my entire class was actually picked up by a very, very good agency, except for me. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to wait for the phone to ring. And I decided right then and there to start my company. It was very simple. I was using basements and places I could rent, and and I was doing whatever I could do, right? And strangely, very quickly, a person who I was always told I wasn't very athletic and I wasn't very good at things, found myself being asked to come out and fight direct. The reason being is that people liked the stories I told, how I could build them into a performance. They liked how I helped them find their character, and they really, really liked how I treated them. And I think because of when I came out into the community, previously it was sort of seen, stage combat was sort of seen as a place for hyper aggressive cowboy-esque Hollywood versions of stuntmen, as opposed to what people really do, which is a profession, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm.
So that's what happened. I found myself in demand in these companies that needed help, didn't know where to go. The actual people who were already established as fight directors were high up, and weren't available to them, right? And so I decided to bite the bullet and actually invest and open my very first studio in '96. That's when I went, you know what, I'm really going to bring people to me, have a permanent space, and started investing in weapons. And then, honestly, I watched my career move from auditioning actor really to fight director. And this is also when I started offering classes, because I had permanent space that built and grew and allowed people to really continue. Because previously I would do them here and there and as availability. And then I just was really lucky. I kept growing and went to another space that doubled in size, and then the space very well, even larger, the contemporary wit. And quite frankly, it was when I started dating Kirsten and marrying my wife that I took this huge next step with her help. And we went from sort of a small operation to one that I was really proud of. And that would have been in 2000. We got together in 2003 is when we went to this space that we're in now. And that's what I mean by there was moments of time where I grew. Oh, and Fight Directors Canada began in '93, and I was asked to join with the advanced class by the president at the time, and the first of the Fight Masters. And so it really, I was super fortunate because I think I was in the right place at the right time, and I recognized that perhaps I could offer something. And that's how I found myself where I'm at. The firearms are unique. What I mean by that is I was really, honest to God, sure, I'd never do firearms, I was afraid of firearms, but people kept around me doing really dumb things, dangerous things, things you just don't want people to do. And out of a place of a sense of someone's got to say or do something, I basically focused on learning as much as I could. And again, just grew, and I'm still training and still studying as we speak. So I'm not done, right? And yeah, so that's how I was in the position where I met you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lucky enough that I think the biggest success is word of mouth, right? And people, I think, generally just liked the environment that Kirsten and I and my peers, my fight instructors and my assistants and the ongoing students have created at the WIT. And it's very much a community versus a top-down, me in control of everything.
Well, it absolutely is. Like the way that everybody there's helpful, make sure that this is how we, like, the big things are, like the top three rules, right? Safety, story, and style, right? Like that's the big thing, and it's so important that we have people to make sure that that we're taken care of, right? So that people aren't doing stupid things, right? That the like you said with the gun stuff, right? Like that's really, really keen. Would you say that like let's do so, since we've sort of started at the beginning, and as you've grown as well with FDC, Fight Directors of Canada, like from the beginning to where it is now, there must be like leaps and bounds of transition into a better set. Would you say a more coherent, or would be the word, I guess, more would it be, things have improved greatly since when you first started, right?
Have I frozen on you?
No,
Can you
no.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Sorry, because I lost a little bit. So I beg to ask you, go back, ask that one more time.
All right.
The previous thing.
So basically, what I was saying is would you say that things have changed and evolved for the better since, because you've been with FDC since '93?
Oh, yes.
Like, would you say that
Yeah.
as growing it into it, like has things gone from, like, I guess, like more Wild West into something a little bit more solid in that regard?
Yeah, I think what I really like to think of it is this way. So the people before, the generation before me, were immensely talented, really, really, really neat people. Because I'd met sort of our he was the figurehead of FDC while alive, Patty Crane, and he was so gifted. And this is going to sound like I'm backhand an insult, but I don't mean it this way. But I think before FDC, stage combat in Canada was in the hands of very gifted amateurs. And that sounds really insulting. I don't mean it that way, because if you think of what it means to be an amateur, it means often that you have a tremendous love of what you're doing. And it also means that there usually isn't the structure, at least the way I'm thinking of it, the structure and the support to allow you to move from amateur to the next level. And this is, and I'm feeling like I might be speaking against what I'm going for, but it's the different, and I don't mean professional, because what makes you professional, it very simply is getting paid. Mm-hmm. Right? If we're talking about what is the fundamental thing that's the difference. No, but I meant it's like, especially because the Olympics just ended today. Like I just, that sense of this really heightened a community of skilled people who can share, you can grow with, you can train with, that you can talk over materials. That's what happened. FDC allowed us to come together as a very large professional community of participants and urge ourselves forward and allow us to move beyond like a siloed, very singular awareness. Because I was pretty much, despite the fact that I had original training from the person who started me in school, Bob Seal, I was mostly self-taught with some work with Simon, but because there really wasn't a place by '93 with FDC coming together, I was able to start meeting more people, and this really did it, right? Giving us the impetus to start exploring. Over time, from '93 to now, I had been president of FTC twice, which meant that I was in the hot seat to try to move things from a handshake, this is going to sound sexist, but gentleman's agreement of things to like, let's really talk about policies and procedures and what comes next. Now, I certainly didn't do it all. there have been presidents after me and presidents who really helped move with the board of directors forward. The Fight Masters added all sorts of new things. But that idea, I think, was we went from, sure, everyone knows what we're talking about, when you quickly realize that's not the case, right? Like it's in your head until you discuss it, to, I think, a really robust structure, right? And now the big new step is addressing things that before were not talked about as much, in the interest in the needs of the unique needs of BIPOC people and people who perhaps weren't finding themselves represented or as welcome as they should have been. Now, this is going to be, I'm afraid I might dislocate my shoulder, slap myself on the back here, but I'm going to say this, that up to this point, I've been very proud of what Kirsten and my peers and I have been able to succeed in doing at the WIT, right? And I really always wanted to be at the forefront of not just technique and awareness of skills, but knowing that we wanted it to be a place for the individual to grow, right? And people move at their own speed. And despite the fact that you and I are talking about a set of techniques that can be learned towards a goal of performance, I think our most successful, I think the most successful experience people get at the WIT is partnering, working really with other people, realizing how much we depend on the other. And as performers, it's not just the other, the partner actor, it's the audience, right? Even in recorded medium like film, you may not be getting the experience back from the viewer who is obviously in a different location than you, but there's this realization that it's not a solitary art, what we do. The other thing we think we've been successful in is that we're using stage combat as a lens to explore what it is to be a storyteller and a performer, right? So we love it. Obviously, it's such a fantastic way because drama doesn't exist without conflict, and what's more conflict than conflict? But what I really feel we're achieving is getting people up to understand other parts of themselves and how to act. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Because we have all sorts of people coming through, right? Yeah. And so, long-winded way of answering, I think things have gotten better. I think we'll constantly, by the next generation coming forward, be challenged as to things that they are noticing that we might have been unaware of. At the same time, I'm a big fan of continuity and an awareness that despite things changing and growing, there's a huge importance of knowing where we came from and remembering how we got there. Because I think that there's a danger sometimes, because I was a kid once, right?
Yeah.
Where you forget that just because you didn't experience it or see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Or you know what I mean? Like somehow you are unique to the new challenges and mistakes you're making, when we know that the people before us made them too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel that as president twice of FDC, do you feel that that the standards that you have are bleeding out globally? Well, bleeding out.
We have, we have, I think, healthy relationships with our sister organizations in the United Kingdom, in the United States. We met people, like we had a World's Conference where we had people from Scandinavia, and we've had people come in from Belgium and Germany. And so we've met, in Australia, New Zealand. I've even worked with some people from South Africa, in that there are places in the world that are far from us. And I think what's great is I think there's a tremendous respect and, dare I say, affection for what we're doing and who we are at Fight Directors Canada. And that makes me really happy. And the really important thing to remember is there's many ways to achieve goals. I once was told very aggressively by someone who said, "You just teach what you think is right." And I'm like, correct.
Yes.
Because
Well, why would I?
now
Why
that
would I
doesn't
do?
mean
Why would I do otherwise?
exactly. That doesn't mean that I don't challenge myself or ask myself, is it still correct? Because I can promise you, the teacher director you met was not the man who started in 91, was not the person who was working in 96, and is likely, even if you like came back to class today, I'd be doing things differently. And you go, oh, that's new from Daniel, because I'm constantly asking, is this the way it should be? And also I'm seeing other people do stuff that I really like. Some people call it stealing. I call it recognizing greatness and accepting it.
Well, of course. And that's the thing that I really appreciate about going there, is that, you learn from previous mistakes, or not even mistakes necessarily, but previous. We're great. Growth, right? We're like, you have such a great product and such a great atmosphere but just to rest on your laurels, you'd suffer and die, because it's not some, oh, that's great, I can do better, or oh, that's great, I see we can continue and grow and make this a bigger and better thing, right? Like that's sort of,
it's such a personal, yeah, like, because the at risk of sounding perhaps a little huggy, it's such a personal journey for all the artists coming through the doors. And by the way, for people watching this, if you think, oh, I'm not allowed to come because I'm not a professional dancer, actor, stunt person, no, we have people who just always wanted to have
sword fight,
the pleasure of swashbuckling. Yeah,
so really,
come because it's fun. Now, fully up, we've been closed since March 9th, 2020. And we will open again, and I still have the space, nothing, but it's been heartbreaking. I've been super lucky because I've been directing and writing, and I have been doing things through Zoom, but it's not really what I'm super interested in, what I do. And I just finished working with a friend on the first in-person, in-space performance. I'll do a shout out to Frog in Hand and Colleen Snell, who she's amazing and works at the WIT all the time. It was huge, and I realized how important being in space is. And I will be doing helping with a television show for the internet, filming in Ottawa. And,
that's great.
Yeah, and so it's been really challenging, as we all know. And I believe what you said it earlier when we were talking, that things are going to get better. People are saying back to normal, and let's be honest, we never had it normal. In the arts, there's no normal.
Yeah, of course.
What is normal, right? So
but better. It will be better.
Yeah, I have confidence, but like everyone else, sometimes my patience is strained, right? and there's some dark days of the soul when you ask yourself, should I continue, or what's the point of this? So for people listening to this, I just want to reassure you, you're not alone feeling these things. And I think there's no great lesson about what I'm about to say. It's just, nothing's forever. And I think the art of all of it is recognizing the things that give you pleasure and make you better as a person, and the stuff that you loathe and makes you a person you don't want to be, address.
Mm-hmm.
This
is getting rather intimate. Speaking of that, would you say that you're Rachel and Casey, intimacy coordinator? Would you say that that's sort of because I was a while ago, a friend of mine, coworker, we were discussing intimacy coordinators, and like how they're becoming more and more prevalent in film and television. And they were like, why the hell do you need that? Like, what do you
Well,
mean you need to would
so before they had a title and before they were recognized as a group, because I was the person in the room who helped actors find their way through physical challenging work, I was doing that work. And remember what I said earlier about gifted amateurs versus professionals? I am more than willing to accept the fact that there is absolutely a space for someone who's going to know more than I do and has a skill set that they've invested their time and energy in, and have focused on something they feel is wanting, right? Mm-hmm. So hence the development and now the creation of intimacy directors. Now, nothing's a perfect mirror, but I've watched it grow very much the way FTC did or fight directing does, in that at first you're a nuisance because now it's another thing I need to pay money for, says the producing company, theater, some people from the time before there was intimacy directing being used would question as you did. But the thing I want to suggest is, if it's an asset, gets you where you want to go with a better performance. So this is very product oriented, but like if you're getting a better product that has a stronger emotional connection with your audience, putting your actor in a place where they can do better work and feel freer in their work and more express and more expressive, it's great. Just with stage combat. If it's something though that isn't working for the individuals in the show, and people will be shocked I'm going to say this, and it's not causing harm, then perhaps it's not necessary. But my suggestion is, with fight directing, intimacy design, if it's in the show, meaning violence or a moment where people are doing something that they have a comfort question, it likely will be a help, not a hindrance. But like all things, we're finding a way. And I think knowing the people I know who do it, they would also admit that they're growing and learning and seeking to be better at what they do. I think mostly, though, we need to enlarge our view of what it is to create. I'm going to totally take a slant shift here. Hang on, seatbelt, because I'm changing directions on you. Mm-hmm. But before COVID hit, I had a really strong feeling with the changes in the environment of what it was to be a worker in Canada or in the Western world. I thought what was going to happen, and it may still, is that people are going to find themselves more and more seeking things that nourish them, that make them happy. Like, people are already very plugged in, obviously, with the internet, video games. Think of the things that you have the ability to spend time with: reading, television, movies, live concerts, sports. And these are all great. I'm going to suggest, though, that people want to do things. So we're going to see more people performing in events where they create music and sports, people trying their hands at writing. And I was expecting to see people coming out who perhaps didn't want the structure of a martial arts dojo, but the skill building and sheer joy of accomplishing something, a sword fight, that is really fun and yet was controlled. Do you know what I mean? Versus the like sparring with fencing, stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, think of all the neat things that people learned. There was a period where people were doing that line dancing, right? You know what I mean? And there was a joy in doing something as a group, right? And I was feeling that, one, if we create it, like if we find ourselves in a world where people suddenly are not dying because they're working so hard because they don't have enough money to live. Now they actually have both some money and time. We're going to start seeing people want to just do things, and the mantra that you have to somehow be stellar at what you do is not necessarily the case. Now, for us, obviously, we're going to have people who want to be the best possible performer, and that's going to be a goal, and they'll be doing that, and we'll be servicing that. There are other people who just want to be in a room and have fun, and there's room for that too. So the going back to the intimacy thing, there's going to be a host of people who will never do it because they're doing things that are for their own pleasure of experiencing things, like taking how to make, like, to learn to paint or work with clay, things like that.
Sourdough bread.
Yeah. Then there's other people who will take it not for professional needs, but because they think it will help them in their lives, right? Finding a way to new way to talk about expressing how they feel, right? And I'm trying to be very careful here because I'm not trying to diminish what they do at all. But from my experience as a fight director and a fight teacher, we don't know the direction that our rooms are going to go in and who's in the room, right?
Yeah.
And I can imagine people just want to know more about interaction between people, because we've actually been pretty shitty as a society until relatively recently to even put voice to certain things. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And using something that's like frequently seen or easy to see is let's say pornography, right? And not to be down on it or to judge someone for using it or being in it, nothing like that. But if you only knew about sexuality through pornography, you're probably missing out on an awful lot of the things that make individuals and couples and dare I say groups happy, right? And you know what I'm saying? And so this is super important. I'm not striving to be judgy. It's just I've had such fortunate opportunities to talk to people, with you as an example, where we talk about a technical need that we're doing in stage combat, but it eventually becomes, without me trying to be a shrink or anything, but we're like discussing some pretty heady, super interesting things for the person. And people walk out, come back later and tell me, you made me think about this, and I feel, and I.
Well, what's amazed
that they like people are like really finding out about themselves simply because we're creating a platform to allow them to explore things.
But really, what's more intimate than putting a sword into somebody? Like you're at a you're at a point. You're at the here with the height of emotion, right? And the nice thing is that for those who don't know, when you're testing or to get into the levels of it, you do a fight scene, right? So you build it with your partner and all that. And you're right, like you're sitting there and these are these emotions that bubble up, right? Like hatred, anger, feelings of or absolute bitter sadness that can like really churn up into it. And that's another reason I feel it's and like you were saying, that it's all of a sudden now we are able to people want to do things, right? People want to perform, and like not only do you learn prima segunda, like all that, like the
foundational skills,
the technical aspect of it, but it's also you get to go and do Shakespeare or bits on Hell's Angels on Wheels.
That's still a unique event. That was a unique event for you. And remember, we wrote a scene together, right? We had the scene where you were like fighting at Troy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and it was sword and shield. Were I really like? I was going to say I was looking at the new curriculum that FDC has Done.
Yep.
So let's just talk a bit about that for a sec. So the levels that if you get into FDC,
And you want to certify.
yeah, I want to certify. So there's basic, intermediate, advanced, instructor, and then master. Is it, or is there? Am I
Yeah.
missing
So
any?
let's clarify. So active
Okay.
combatants are three: basic, intermediate, advanced. That's all one needs to be a performer, right? Like that's for for people who are really interested. You can become an instructor. You don't have to. It's not like getting your belts and you're obligated to become a teacher. But if you want, we have that. And then there is fight director. Fight director is sort of it's a different, it's married to, but a different stream. And then a fight master is really a title of respect and recognition of a few things. One, and this is unscientific. This is me just saying, this is, if someone says, what makes someone a fight master? One, they've really invested themselves in not just the art of stage combat, but the relationships and organization of FDC, right? Meaning that we strive to increase the art and serve to help build the community, and generally are a resource for others, right? And I think when I received my fight mastership, I took it as an incredibly it was a huge honor, and I took it as recognition for what I was attempting to do, right? Which was basically what we've been talking. The active combatants, basic, makes sense. Basic is our foundational, what we think every single person who steps up into a scene as a professional performer, or sorry, let me correct that, as a performer for an audience. And honestly, if I had my way, all performers would have it, because it would go a long way to A, safety, stopping people from getting hurt, story, really connecting with being a better actor and character, and style, really marrying with the entire show and the audience's expectations. So that's what that's about. Intermediate is when the next step occurs and people really want to move from foundational to much more expressive, weapon-specific understanding and growth of the build that you had on foundation. Advanced is where you're really taking off and going even further. So I guess a way to think of it is active combatant, basic, if you believe in how our contemporary education system works, is we should leave high school. Like everyone should get at least their high school education, with the most optimistic belief that it sets you up to be a great member of society. I'm aware there's huge arguments with that, so please bear with my metaphor here.
Of course, of course.
The concept of social good and public education, where people understand how their society works and the history of their society, and foundational stuff like basic, like the maths to help you get through the life and stuff. And the more I'm saying I'm like, that is not what happens.
That's not what happened.
But that was the goal. That was the goal, right?
That was the goal, but
yeah. Second, intermediate, I'm going to say, is like getting going to university or college and getting your undergrad, right? Meaning that you're really now moving into a professional view of taking ideas and moving them to a specialization of understanding. And so if I'm hiring someone to do something, I want them to have that, because it's more than foundational, and we can really start seeing art, right? And then the advanced are like getting your PhD, so sort of that shape of people going on. Because the thing about being an instructor is an entirely different skill set, right? Like you should, of course, know all the skills we did to get up to as active combatants. I think I know some teachers who are phenomenal performers and phenomenal teachers. I know people who are phenomenal performers who have no interest in being teachers and lack, I think, the empathy and patience to teach, and they are aware of it. There's nothing wrong with that. And then other people who will fully admit, I'm not the best athlete, I'm not the best practitioner, because I can just look at my peers who are exceptional, and I'm almost embarrassed to be on stage attempting to do what they do very, very well, but they suck at other things. Suck it. No, but but it's that thing, right? So, and this is, by the way, the single major reason why I went from a one-person shop when I was starting and learning as a teacher to I always hire as many teachers as possible to teach with me, because the outcomes for the participants are astronomically better, because you have different voices, different artistic views, different awarenesses and places in their own journey. So how can you not be stimulated and have a better experience?
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So all that gets us through active combat, and then we have teachers. Directing is yet another skill set that's different. There are some overlaps, but director is so product oriented as it needs to be, because you have a very finite amount of time. Like, you could say the same thing about teacher, but you know what? Worst case scenario, if you don't succeed as the student participant, there's more time to keep growing and learning. Where the director, the goal is to get in finite time from absolutely zero, because we don't know what we're doing, the fight isn't built, people don't know the character, to bam, performance.
Yeah.
So needless to say, that's a whole skill set.
In 3 weeks, in 4.5 weeks, get it done. Yeah.
4.5 weeks. Oh, aren't you cute? You're lucky if you get 2 weeks. And but we're doing everything else in 2 weeks, right? And then finally, the fight master, as I said, is this because in all honesty, yes, I love, because who doesn't like to get honored, right? I love the fact that I've been gifted this wonderful responsibility of being a fight master, and I want to live up to it. But if you ask me, what do I do? I'm a fight director. I'm a fight teacher, a fight instructor, right? Does that make sense? Because some are jobs, others are titles, if that makes sense. So that's the shape of the organization. The changes you were describing, I think, are really excellent. And I kind of think we were doing it already at the WIT overall almost. But the idea, we went from now the weapon forms, because you start with 3 weapons at basic, becomes 4 weapons in intermediate that are new, and 5 yet again when we do advanced. And the things that I think are interesting isn't so much that they're curtailing what we teach, quite the opposite, taking the leash off and allowing us more expressive exploration. And the goals, again, are the same, insofar as we want you to be able to, using basic is pretty much the same, where you need to be able to work safely and effectively and dare I say, performatively, excitingly, with unarmed, with no weapons. How do you go from a standing position to the floor without breaking something? It's not a small skill,
it is not. Skill. Absolutely.
And then we have one-handed weapons, which are single sword, and that gives us a control of tip work and understanding our responsibilities and safeties of movement when dealing with another person, and the energy transfer and illusion of energy transfer. And then the next is a two-handed weapon that for the most part is larger than the sword. So right now, most people are using staff, and that's great. It really starts growing your concept of space, interaction between people, and what you can do.
Do you think
at the next level?
Sorry, dude, with that, because that's what I did, the basic. Do you think that so maybe spear, you could use it?
No, for sure.
Like, is it just all of a sudden it's really opened up?
Correct. Yeah.
Opened it up. Yeah.
And then at intermediate, originally it was small sword, which is very fine motor skill, point work of an 18th century weapon, a very short-lived weapon, but is so useful and expressive in helping people understand martial concepts and timing and movement, that we've retained that because we think it's really useful. What used to be rapier and dagger now is a weapon in each hand, and they're dissimilar sized weapons. Now, full up, I'll continue teaching what I teach because I've been finding what I need done successfully. That doesn't mean I'm not going to learn new things, but I just feel, in my case, rapier and dagger really excessively gives an understanding of how to work with dissimilar weapons, how to be both defensive and offensive, and being able to make use of all of your body, because so much stuff is singular, can make you forget about your other side. And then what was longsword now can be katana, but basically it's a two-handed weapon that's different than the staff, right? In in how it sort of functions. And that gives you intermediate. Oh, sorry. And then a growth, which I always thought of this way, from basic unarmed to an intermediate unarmed, is a more focus on the martial aspects versus attempting to recreate in an absurdly too small a time a unique martial art, right? Yeah. And often people were trying to generate the illusion of an art they may not, like an Eastern art, that they may not know as well as they should, or more importantly, it's absurd to think in 30 hours I'll be able to help someone become a Shaolin monk. So I always moved it forward as much more of a militarized, aggressive movement from what was basic into an intermediate. So just that sense of what it means to be not only much more proficient as a character, but desiring harm greater than being thrown into violence that usually happens in a basic fight. And then advanced, what used to be sword and shield, we always did sword, shield, and spear. I did anyway. So that's basically the same thing, where there's an expression of two different styles of weapon. We think using some sort of shielding object as both aggression and defense is super expressive and interesting. We have a change with what used to be a case of rapier, which continue, but we always did at the WIT, who teach a case with a cape. And I always return to more exploration of dagger. That's leaving that more open rather than only doing that. And some people who went elsewhere to train never learned weapons that are like a whip or a rope or a cape that are full of movement rather than a singular object like a sword. Yeah. And the word I'm looking for is just out of my head. And then we also had advanced small sword, and that's being retained. We'll see if that continues, because the idea is there's so much to learn from that weapon of, as I said, time.
I think they said point work more, so it's a little bit more into the.
That's true, because you could use there's Chinese point work, sword work, and but I'm saying that idea. But you're absolutely right. Yeah. And then found is being kept because it's so useful, and found is basically mundane.
It's so much fun. It is so much fun. With the toilet.
It's a personal favorite of mine. Yeah.
When they had the bucket over my head, blah. It's
the big change though was what used to be martial arts weapons, and it had the Eastern martial arts weapon. Now that's just really moving much further into specifically, so you might have no weapons, so it might be a continuation of the unarmed aspect we've been talking about. It might be knife, it might be, but the idea is moving into an even more aware of what it is to be martial, because all the other things we talked about, there are fight directors and instructors who do quite a stylized form. And that's not to say it's not valuable, but it's not necessarily serving in the same way of getting people to understand. And this is, look at my fingers, realistic fighting, because of course, what are we talking about? And so you're right. It's about allowing a lot more opportunity. And of course, there was the discussion about allowing more voices into the work, since there's all sorts of various fight forms and techniques that other people do that aren't, let's say, part of classical theater. And theater is bending and stretching and growing as we speak, as is feature film and television. So
as it always has, right? Like, do you watch stuff like older, like Errol Flynn and the old? God, yes. And you're like,
well, the stuff I liked was always good. Does that make sense? So I'm completely aware. I'll use dance because this way we're not talking about something that's close to the heart, personal. But you watch old musicals, let's say, or old movies where there's dance in it, and they're dancing ballet. And contemporary ballet is more assertive, more athletic, more the jumps are higher. There's things that we expect that earlier ballet, it's not that they're doing bad ballet, but it might simply not be to our tastes. So I'm completely aware that there's a whole bunch of fighting films that were a big deal when I was growing up. long before my birth or contemporary of my young adulthood. And I can look at them and see the things I would do differently now. But the stuff I liked generally was good. What's interesting is looking at the things that were bad even then. Right?
Yeah.
To do a shout out, and this is a great drinking game if you like drinking, but be careful, you might find yourself in the hospital from alcohol poisoning from this particular thing I'm about to say. But it's not Ninja Cop. Oh my God, is it I might have to come back. We may have to put something like edit in here the actual name of it.
I'll put the name down. Yeah,
it's not Shogun Cop. But anyway,
Samurai Cop.
It's not Samurai. Thank you. Oh my
Samurai
God.
Cop. No, I was like, yeah.
Samurai Cop is a guilty pleasure because, first of all, it is. I don't really. You can't watch it without a sense of jaw-dropped amazement. If you know the story behind it, like everything was like done in one shot. They never rehearsed anything. The director was writing it as they did it. You know, like the thing was just madness.
I'm just going to make a quick note. Sam Cop. I'm going to send you something. I follow Red Letter Media.
Yeah.
And they did a sit down with the star of Samurai Cop. Oh, you seen it? Okay.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is like you just what you said. It's like, yeah, then they showed up and I did this. It's like,
but that's an important example. The violence was never good.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like I never looked at it, you know. And then there was so remember, I'm a child of the late 70s, you know what I mean? Like early 80s. So the TV shows are on. There were some very, very good shows that had a stylized sort of acting style and violence. But there was some really bad TV that I look at and go, why did I watch that? You know, and ridiculous, ridiculous violence, right? Everyone watched the A-Team.
I loved it.
What I mean? But if you look at it now, it's like picking people up and throwing them over cars, like just shooting guns everywhere and no one getting hurt. You know what I mean? It's a bit absurd. That's all I'm saying. And I even know the Family Guy made a joke about it where they pretended to be the A-Team and they were talking about, we're going to shoot, you're going to shoot us? No, we're going to shoot around you and then you'll drive off and crash a car. He goes, oh my God, are you kidding? Like you can really get hurt with a crash car. You go, yeah. And they get really serious talking like, yeah, like my brother-in-law, like he broke his neck. Oh yeah, well, be safe. So there was always bad and always good. And I have no doubt in my mind, it's about how do you film it, how much time you have, what's important, and the belief that what does the audience want, So all this comes back to has there been changes? 100%. But the stuff that was good remained good because it told the story, connected to character, and had you as an audience have an emotional journey. That's it. Like it's an art, not a science, but that's it, right? Whereas when you're watching something and you go, that makes no effing sense, right? Well, like, and even contemporary stuff, like fans are really hard. You know what I mean? Like like people are so mean, and no one can have nice things because everyone's like, well, that's not my Batman, and Spider-Man will never, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting about that is I only agree with it when I see something that's a bad choice. And what I mean by that is it doesn't move the story forward. It goes counter to the character and the character doesn't acknowledge it, right? So someone can do something out of character, but it probably then affects them later, traumatizes them. So for instance, Superman breaking the neck. Yeah. People lost their shit over it. He was really upset after he broke the neck and it affected him.
Yeah.
So did I love it? No, but at least there was some acting acknowledgement, some character acknowledgement. What always makes me laugh, remember Independence Day?
Of course.
Yeah, sure, right? And so
watched it a million times.
Everyone's really happy, right? Remember when the aliens are defeated and everyone's smiling and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I think a third of the human population is dead. And societies are all broken. Yeah. Like I'm like, oh my God, like people don't have clean water to drink. There's going to be no food or medicine. Like who's going to take like decades.
Decades to get back to
Yeah.
society.
So it's not unbelievable that people are happy because you're like, yes, we triumphed. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, next week's gonna suck.
Yeah. This is when you go back and you're like, oh yeah, the White House is a pile of rubble. Oh yeah.
And the joke
LA's
about in Star Wars, when the second Death Star blows up over the planet with the Ewoks and everyone's singing and dancing, it's like, yeah, that large thing in space, that's gonna really mess up their environment.
I'm gonna say all the big hunks of metal falling down. What would you say is your favorite weapon? Like if I was to
you know what? I get that question all the time. So my jokey answer is the one that's in my hand, the one I'm about to pick up. They speak to me so differently and allow me so many different things. Dare I compare it to my favorite food, right? Because in the morning, my favorite food might be very different than my lunch or dinner. And who you're with and what you're eating can affect what your favorite is at the time. And so I love so many different things, and you've been in the armory at Rapier Wit, and it's varied and extensive. Not at all compared to you had earlier. You interviewed Chris Warlow, fantastic creations, who you should use if you need to rent weapons or props. Anyway, the reason why weapons are different throughout time is so interesting. Spiritual choices, social choices, ethical beliefs, resources, desire for machismo, or even just plain aesthetics, and we think this is beautiful and this isn't beautiful. Like, it's really interesting, all that stuff that has nothing necessarily to do with this is an efficient, effective weapon.
Well, Chris,
and there's tons and tons of weapons in history that we look at and go, these are strangely absurd, and they're almost never used. Why? Because they're strangely absurd and they're not efficient and useful.
Well, Chris and I were talking about that. He was saying that Roman shield versus Spartan shield, like this versus this, like why is it? And I'm a huge fan of that stage. There's a YouTube program I watch, history. Basically, the guy breaks down battles and battle formations for like he did a stint with Julius Caesar from the Gallic Wars all the way up till his death, and then beyond with his predecessor and like Mark Antony, and like the sort of the breaking of the second triumvirate and all that within that. And it's just, and then you kind of like even the evolution of Roman armor itself.
I was just going to say that the Romans were an empire. Sorry, the Romans were before empire, you're a republic. The Roman Republic. So first of all, they're a backwater town up through a republic, up through empire, and then they're two empires, and then they collapse. Yeah. That's a huge period of time, and the change in weapons, armor, tactics, is huge. It's like saying a knight, so, or a samurai for that matter. Like they change over time, and so when people say what's better, a knight or a samurai, well, depends. First of all, when and what do you want them to do? And also thinking of weapons that are interesting, like the Aztecs had, using a modern term, less lethal weapons, not because they didn't know how to make lethal weapons, because they totally did, but they wanted to capture people to be sacrificed later, as an example, right? And so your needs are really, really different. Contemporary concepts, military thinking went from killing an enemy to wounding an enemy, because when you kill an enemy, well, they're just out of the fight. When you wound an enemy, it takes three people
and resources.
You wounded the person, but the two people to get them out of combat, right?
But also resources and time and get them back on their feet. That level of
morale issue, right? You're literally looking at these people harmed, where if someone's dead, they're buried, and people sadly are forgotten, right? And so that's all super interesting. And then technologies, needs, and changes are not the same thing as when you said resources, so relatively recently, meaning 100, 150 years ago, they could have made or given all the soldiers rifled firearms that could fire multiple shots. But the cost of that technology and the cost of training people to use the technology properly and the cost of the infrastructure to guarantee this sudden huge increase in need of bullets and powder was they went, we don't want that. And so too much isn't looked into. So for instance, more than once I've worked on shows and people go, well, it's stupid. Why did they march in a line and use muskets? Well, because they're smoothbore and it's the only way to put enough lead down range to affect your outcomes. And remember that there was a whole bunch of people in those lines who were literally were illiterate. And so, and they had to be turned into clockwork mechanisms to get them to efficiently do what needs to be done. And as opposed to, you have a rifled firearm that's contemporary, and those people were generally smarter and more trained because they were asked to do harder things, and were even though they're still firing a round ball that's less efficient, they're sharpshooters, they're specialists. And now, of course, everyone's firing in the contemporary military a rifled firearm that holds many, many rounds.
Unlike,
the firearm.
I was just saying, unlike the Soviets back, and you give the one guy the gun and then the 5 people behind him a bullet. So when that guy dies, you can pick up and shoot, and then you die, and then the guy behind you gets another crack at it.
But do you think the Soviets would have done that if they could have given everyone a firearm? Of course not.
No,
they were caught in a situation. We can argue and talk about this of their own making, but after that period, meaning it's still World War II, and the Soviets go from what could be described as a rather costly and challenging rifle to make, despite the fact it's, you know what I mean, like it's simple compared to other firearms, but they went to a really, really simple submachine gun that they could mass produce and throw into people's hands, thinking that they're fighting in very close quarter and they just want to spray bullets downstream.
Yeah.
You know, and also contemporary today, where I'm old enough to remember when the Canadian firearm, I was very young at the time, the Canadian firearm of the military was a rifle round, right? In an FN FAL, which was what you were helping me with, which is a much more powerful round and much larger round versus the contemporary AR style rifle. And it's not like they hadn't thought about it. It was going back to, they want to wound people over killing people, not because they're merciful and not because they're morally nicer. They just did exactly what you're talking about, messing up the enemy.
Yeah.
You know? And also, I now, as a soldier, carrying twice of the ammunition. The Romans you were talking about, as well as the Romans used to, at one period, carry all this stuff behind them on carts. And Marius and so the train of all this stuff was called, and I love this word, impedimentia, an impediment.
Yeah.
And so what what that general did is, and I'm sure it's Marius because I think they called them Marius's mules. He made all the soldiers carry their own shit. And then a squad, there would be one mule, physical, like an actual animal, for carrying like cooking stuff. But the idea was to make them light and lean and able to move. And they were able to move faster than their enemies. Well,
you could pop up walls. I watched a thing there the other day about the Germania when they went in there in the battle of what is it, the forest there, starts with a T, when the Germans were like, oh, there's a rebellion, can you come help us? Meanwhile, there's like, and they surrounded them, killed them all, crucified the centurions, and like burnt it was disturbing what they did to them. It wasn't even fit. That was in the AD, well after
Yeah.
Caesar's stuff, but it was
And
but they could throw up walls like that, right? You could build fortifications in a matter of minutes, right? Because they carried all the stuff with them. But it's
and the question you want to ask, which I find always interesting, is why didn't everyone do that?
Mhm.
And the answer is the Romans put all this time and training into their people, and almost all other people they were fighting against, except for that empire to the east, were kind of semi-professional or non-professional soldiers.
Yeah.
The Romans were every inch a professional soldier. People talk about the Spartans and the 300 concept of like, there was only 300 of them. You haven't brought many, except you haven't brought any.
Wow.
As opposed to professional soldiers. But the other side of it, let's talk about contemporary professional soldiers. A contemporary professional soldier, outside of being a hyper specialist, like we have a dear friend who's a helicopter pilot. That's a specialist. And he's a helicopter pilot for special forces. That's even more specialized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the generalist soldier has to know an awful lot. And the idea of having someone in the military who can't read is a no-go. Like, that's not going to happen today. Mm-hmm. And so and the other thing is, I'm old enough to remember when the concept of being a soldier was like, you'd have to be stupid to be in the army, right? And I think the Gulf War, the Iraq War, and Afghanistan, with particularly the American, Canadian, and British experiences, was the realization of how much one needs to know. And the reason why I think this is important is when I'm creating fights and helping build characters, is who are these people, right?
Yeah.
You were talking about Shakespeare a moment ago in the Hal fight, where he was like a ne'er-do-well party boy going up against someone who had, Hotspur, who
is devoted,
sees himself as a soldier's soldier. That's an interesting, like, how does that defeat occur, right?
Absolutely.
Where Hal wins that. The play of Julius Caesar, what does it mean for people who once were soldiers to rebel and make bad tactical decisions, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. So just because you were trained doesn't mean you were trained right, or just because you are a leader in position doesn't mean you're a leader in your mind, right?
Yeah.
And you and I've had interesting discussions, I think, when we were working towards the goal of finishing project, was the difference between what bothers me as an audience member of dumb mistakes that characters make versus, I call them intelligent mistakes, meaning that you've been trained, you believe in certain things, you have a sense of your rightness, and you are focused in a goal, and you completely are blind to something because of who you are. That's an intelligent potential mistake. What I call a dumb mistake that bothers me as an audience are people who move and work completely out of character or do something. So for instance, I see it all the time where, using a contemporary concept, where people who are clearly supposed to be well-trained are as to quote my friend Sean's comment, don't laser your buddies, where you're moving your firearm through your own men as you're talking to them. It's so not going to happen with these people who are supposed to be at the sharpest point of the spear, or someone who runs into battle with the sword behind their head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, you can have the sword up and ready to fight, but it's between you and your adversary versus out of plane. and we know there's moments where people are like this or like this, but it's where are you in space in the place of conflict? If you're surrounded by people fighting, you're probably having your weapon ready.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So it's stuff like that. Right?
Well, Dad, I could continue talking to you all day long, but
what I selfishly suggest, after you speak to a whole bunch of other people and you feel a need to revisit this, I'm more than happy.
I would love to have you back as a guest. Right about this time, I usually just say, If you have anything you want to plug, if there's anything you want to, like, say, hey, maybe check this out, or I have this coming up. As the saying goes, the floor is yours, my friend.
So I wish I could say on this date, Rapier Wit reopens. I don't have a hard date yet, but I'm going to suggest join us if you want on Facebook, because we put things up there all the time that I think are interesting, of interesting things about stage combat, about real fighting, about history and weapons, and really funny little things that we share among ourselves. You can always check out our website, www.rapierwit.com.
Links will be in be in the bottom. I'll make sure everything's all done.
Kirsten's will be the first to admit we don't have really new stuff on it yet, because we're, when's the date? But our goal is to have classes that will be shorter rather than full certification classes, just because we're just not sure how things are going to unfold between now December. So I know I'm not going to do certifications before January. That being said, nothing stops you from contacting me and saying, please put me on a contact list. No surprise, because of the amount of time that's passed, I have some really large contact lists right now. But you'll always be able to know what's going on. And my goal is that, for instance, Todd Campbell is another fight master who's fantastic. I would love to give him 4 weeks of 2 hours once a week where he's exploring a weapon. And the class, that's the other thing, people will be smaller groups right now. So there's only going to be allowed 8 people in the room rather than 10. Like, these things are stuff that we're just aware of. So our hands are still a little bit tied and we're still not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in touch, keep an eye out. There's lots of videos to check out on the Rapier Wit YouTube channel. Fully be aware, they're not set up to be watched like you would watch an edited film with lots of cuts and sophisticated alterations from one action to another that you expect to see in a recorded medium. They're what we call locked camera, meaning it's open, there's no movement, and the goal was to allow the performers to see themselves and see the things that they're growing at, getting better at, and things they still need to address, and to show people how the supersized the fight looks. So it's sort of like looking at a recorded live theater performance. Mm. So for some people, it's less pleasing, but if you understand what the structure and goal is, it makes sense, and then you can actually start looking at what it's about. And finally, keep doing your art, whatever it is. It's super important. We all need it for ourselves and for the people we share it with. And remember that things get better.
Perfect. Yeah, just one more thing. You were saying there was another show you were working on. You want to give those guys a show?
I can't speak to it in that when's it going to be released, and because we're just about to film.
Oh no, right? I mean the live one. Is it still going on?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So Colleen Snell's Frog in Hand. It's a live show called Story in the Woods. It's at the Small Arms Building out in Mississauga. It's super cool. The tickets might be all sold out, but check it out. So it's Stories in the Woods. Frog in Hand is the theater company, and it's an environmental show where you're following these performances. It's super interesting, and they deserve all the support they get.
Perfect. All right, my friend Dan, thank you so very, very much. It has been an honor to see you again, my friend, and hopefully soon in the flesh. So blessings to you, my friend. Skål. Take care. Much love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Boy, that was entertaining. I really love Dan. Such a wonderful human being. Absolutely wonderful human being. It broke the mold when they made that, man. Unfortunately, the show that we were talking about has been sold out. In fact, it's probably, I'm not sure if it's running over the weekend, but it is sold out. So, next time. All of the stuff will be down below for Rape Your Wit and all that other my stuff. I'm pretty easy. I'm on Patreon, so if you want to buy me a coffee, I'll thank you in the credits of the video. Bulldog 666-999. Simple. 666-999. Evil, little sexy time in the middle, and it rolls off at the end. Flips and goes. So even if you stand on your head, you always still see a little bit of evil. What else? Yeah. That's it. So, to all of you who have come and sat with us for this wonderful little interview, skål. Until next time.